All right, welcome back to Thompson to Clark. We are here to talk about some pretty darn good Giants baseball of late. Last
Finally.
week was a little bit of doom and gloom. We lost our favorite player. The Dodgers came in here and spanked us in 2 out of those 3 games, but in that third game, Logan Webb did tough it out like he is there to do. He is the ace, and the Giants did win one against the Dodgers. The Rockies came to town. Thankfully, we were able to sweep them, and we're headed into yesterday's ball game, Tuesday night in Pittsburgh. Giants are up 6-2, ninth inning. They just got to shut this thing down, and we are off to the races. And they did not. Luke Jackson comes in. He gets an out on the first pitch that he throws, and just like, oh, this is great. And he then attempts to dibble and dabble and just not pitch aggressively, and he walks the next 2 batters, which forces him to bring in Doval. And a negative thing about bringing in Doval last night is he threw so many pitches. I can't imagine he could even pitch later today when they play game 2 against Pittsburgh, because he threw so many pitches.
Well,
So,
and he also threw what? Saturday and Sunday as well. So Saturday, Sunday, off Monday, throws a lot of pitches Tuesday. So I think that's going to be tough to do. And Luke Jackson, if you remember, on Friday night did the same thing where he got the first 2 outs quickly and then just absolutely struggled. I mean, I know because I scored the game like a old guy.
he did.
I did. I see all the scoring. I scored the game, and I was looking at it, and I'm thinking, man, he just could not get that third out, and it was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, I know he loves that slider. I know that's his out pitch, but going, what I think he was
When it's not working, though.
Well, I think at least in the first batter, it was like a 1-2 count or something, or maybe it's a 2-2 count, and they just bounced 2 sliders, and it's like, oh, ball 4. I was like, man, can we pitch aggressively? Like what we don't want in this position is to put guys on base. Like
Right.
if they get some hits, they get some hits, so be it. But you don't want to give them opportunities, and Luke Jackson absolutely did give them opportunities. Look, the guy had a rough start to the season. He was was he the first one? Because I know Keaton Wynn has a forearm strain, but I think he also
Right.
had a forearm strain too that they were a little worried about, but it came back, and it's like, okay, he's fine. So I know he's had a little bit of a tough ride, but man, I don't know. I would have rather seen. I know, and I know that Melvin was probably using his bullpen as if it was going to be a save situation. So you saw Tyler in the 8th because
Right.
if you knew that you weren't going to need Doval, maybe it's Tyler in the 9th rather than Luke Jackson in the 9th. So that they were sort of playing it in a different way than what had happened, and we can lament that loss. It was really frustrating, especially because I turned off the television because Brian and I were recording the death lineup, and I look and it's the 8th inning, and I'm like, oh, this game is fine. They're up 6-2. Perfect. I don't have to worry about this. And then as Brian and I are recording, JJ is texting us saying how much of a joke this baseball game is. I'm like, what? Did they lost? What? So,
Yeah.
I mean, what is your main takeaway from the last 5 games or so? Beat the Dodgers, sweep the Rockies, and things are looking up, and you're kind of like, is beating the Rockies for real, or is it just because they're the Rockies? How Pittsburgh is essentially the same team that the Giants are. They have the same record,
Yeah.
like the same sort of like. I don't know how Pirates fans feel about their team when you have someone like O'Neal Cruz. I'm sure you're like, oh, that's their Jung Hoo, right? So I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some optimism there, but it's not like they're playing lights out baseball either. So it was like right there for the taking. How do you come out of that game as a fan?
Well, just so you know, too, I mean, the Pirates fans are geeked over Paul Skeens, and he
Oh yeah,
throws.
absolutely.
But by the time you listen to this, he probably will have already thrown and struck us out 27 times.
Paul
But
Skeens and Blake Snell. That's a great matchup.
yeah, that's actually a tough matchup because Paul Skeens can't go more than like 5 innings as it is because of pitch count. And Blake Snell is Blake Snell, and he's coming off an injury, so he's probably not going to go more than 5 innings. So
Yeah,
you're going to
Blake
be.
Snell might get to Paul Skeens' pitch count by the second inning.
I think so. Yeah, there's a good possibility. But Paul Skeens gets up there in pitch count because he strikes so many people out. So you figure 10 strikeouts, that's at least 30 pitches right there, foul balls and everything else. Now you're looking at 40. So 40 pitches just to get 10 strikeouts. But yeah, looking at this team lately, it's obviously a much more fun, exciting team to watch than it was 2 weeks ago. I mean, now it feels like the Boston and Philadelphia series and the Colorado series were so like it feels like a different lifetime. And that's how much I've been enjoying watching the Giants lately. They've had 2 games where they've come back from being down, 3 runs, 4 runs against the Rockies. And then they go and blow a game like last night. But again, when you have the kids, we talked about this and we're going to beat this to death. But when you have the kids in the lineup, you are going to have some growing pains, especially defensively. Things are just going to happen. You got to live with it. But it's a team that can also put runs on the board. I mean, you've got Matos, Luciano, and Ramos, who all have power bats, who have great swings, who have, ridiculous exit velocity off the bat. So they're going to be able to do some fun things if they can get into some good counts. And that's what they were learning in AAA, get into good counts and explode on the baseball. So going forward, I think this team is going to be like a better than 500 team. I don't think this is a 500 or under 500 team as we've seen. They're 4-1 in their last 5 games. Now, that being said, they heartbreaker last night, but again, O'Neal Cruz makes the error in the first. Giants don't score those runs without that happening. So that's why it was a 6-2 ball game at that point when they blew the lead. But they had many opportunities to score. And then so when you look at it, you win tonight, you beat Paul Skeens, and then everybody feels good again. And then all of a sudden the Giants are, 5-1 in their last 6 games, and then looking to get a series victory at 9:30 West Coast time on Thursday morning.
Oh man.
Which we've heard so far, it's a possibility that is a bullpen game. So that could have played into some of the bullpen decisions last night.
Right.
But like you hear all the time, you got to worry about tomorrow. You got to play the game today. If you're up 6-2, you've got to pull the strings to win that game. Worry about tomorrow, because all of a sudden Blake Snell could throw 3 pitches every inning, get 3 quick outs every inning. You don't know. I mean, you know the track record of Blake Snell. That's not going to happen, but you just never know. So you've got to play. If you've got a 4-run lead, you've got to play it like you've got a 4-run lead, and it's an important game to get you to the playoffs, because it is. Losing that game could be the difference between going to the playoffs and not going to the playoffs when October rolls around.
So looking ahead now, our player of the month our player of the week is got to be the guy who actually won the player of the week for the National League.
He's everybody's player of the week. So yeah, we got to pick him.
Congrats to Luis Matos. So he is the player of the week. We don't have to do too much digging there.
No.
But looking ahead, so rest of this week, you mentioned the 2 Pirates games. They go into New York, and the Mets themselves have been struggling. They are actually have a worse record than the Giants do right now. But still, going into New York, you have a 4:10 game, at least our time, on Friday. And then you got the 2 10:40 starts in a row on Saturday and Sunday. And then you come back and you're like, hey, we're coming back home. We're going to be home. And then you play 2 of the best teams in baseball, the Philadelphia Phillies, and we get the New York Yankees to come back. When's the last time the Yankees were here? It's got to be several years.
Oh, man. Probably, I think it was No, it wasn't. Yeah, it might have been 21.
Okay.
Well, I mean, so I guess that's not too long ago, but you know what? It might have even been pre-pandemic. I got to look that one up because I do have a place I can find that.
So this is me saying, let's take advantage of playing these average baseball teams on the road, because when we come home, where theoretically you play better, you're going to have some tough games. So this is just sort of, I'm putting it out there into the universe for the Giants. Let's take care of business. If we need to, if let's go 3-2 in the next 5, come home, and then, because you're going to have to bring your best stuff to play the Phillies and the Yankees.
Yeah. 2019 was last
okay.
time. Yeah,
So our schedule for this show. So Brad and I have been recording these shows for Bleacher Report, and you're going to hear our Bleacher Report segment for this week at the end of this slightly long intro here. This week we're talking about the young players, because last week we talked about the kind of like, if should the Giants tank, should they go all in with the young players, and they sort of had to do it because of the injuries. And now the idea is like, okay, like who's stuck, who should keep playing, who should they send back down when Conforto and Ahmed and Slater come back from the injured list. So that is that discussion. You'll hear that. It's about 32-ish minutes. You'll hear that after we're done with this intro. But for the next few weeks, I think we're holding off on doing live streams for YouTube, because our schedule is really going to be dictated around these Bleacher Report shows. We're going to be on Bleacher Report the next 5 weeks in a row. So next week, we'll be on Bleacher Report on Wednesday. We will then come back and we will record the intro to the show like we're doing now. We'll put that up in podcast form. We'll also put it up in YouTube form. It's just not going to be a live stream. So the whole show will be in both places like normal. We're just not going to live stream. And then starting in June, we're going to be doing 3 post gamers?
3 post games, yes.
So Monday night, we're going to be doing post-game shows on Bleacher Report, and then we'll come back and we'll do our short intro. So those will be our shows. So it's going to be, they'll be up Tuesday morning, sort of like normal, but like our live schedule, but we're just going to record them later in the evening. And we're going to do one show that's on Wednesday during June. So it'll be like this, where we talk about the trade deadline. So that's just a heads up. We'll probably not be doing live streams unless something crazy happens where we need to jump on. But through the end of June, and then we'll see if Bleacher Report still wants to do stuff with us. I think we enjoy doing it. It's just more publicity, more distribution for this show, more eyeballs on this show, which is awesome. That's what we always are looking for. And so that is the schedule for all the way through June. I'm gonna miss doing the live streams for our YouTube channel, but at the same time, Bleacher Report allows us to continue to do the BSPN stuff that we like to do. So we want to prioritize that relationship. And you never know when that ends. You never know, when it changes. So we want to take advantage of it as much as we can. All right, so now you're going to listen to the discussion that we had earlier on Bleacher Report that we are bringing to you about the young players. Brad, was there anybody? We talked about the 3 main key cogs to the lineup right now with the young players. I guess the one we didn't talk about because he's not up, or there's 2 who are not up. We can talk about them now, but Casey Schmidt had an opportunity. His bat did not look any different to me than it did last year. But you made the point in the segment that we're about to play that the defense is going to be there. He is a professional ball player because of the fact that he can pick it so well, and you just want the bat to catch up. But did you see anything different that leads you to think that maybe he could actually provide something for them this year?
He did have the walk-off. That was exciting. But other than that, it's extremely frustrating to watch his at bats right now. I'm not exactly sure. I could look it up really fast what he's hitting down in AAA, but I don't think it's lights out numbers. It was at the beginning of the season, but I think that's kind of tailed off a little bit. Again, you can find a defensive shortstop, third baseman, pretty much anywhere with a little bit of pop in their bat, a little bit of, good at bats. And we have Nick Ahmed. So you've already got that. So Casey Schmidt was hitting 272 in AAA. Since he's gone back down, if you look at his game log, since he's gone back down, last couple of seasons, what was he? 1 for 5, 1 for 4, 1 for 4. He does have a home run. So nothing crazy since he's been sent back down. He's hitting 272 in May in AAA. But yeah, I apologize. 136 in AAA. 272 is what they slap on a 1 for 5 for some reason, even though that's 200. So anyways, the month of May, 136. Kind of some ugly numbers down in AAA. But that being said, no, I haven't seen anything different with his bat. He's unfortunately, I think with all of the other young players that the Giants have, I think he's gonna be a forgotten or forgotten player going forward, or somebody who just gets pushed out and has to get traded down the line. But hate to see it, but
I would love to see them wait until after we know what's going to happen with Matt Chapman after this season.
Yeah.
If the Giants sign Chapman long term, then maybe you do dangle Casey Schmidt and give him opportunity to go elsewhere. But if Matt Chapman is a one and done this year, then it makes a whole lot of sense to either move Luciano to third or to just, invest more in Schmidt and hope that he plays better. Okay, the last person that we didn't mention, and also because he was sent down to AAA, someone who was on the opening day roster, someone who we're really excited about, has had a couple brain farts on the bases, isn't dynamic at any one singular position defensively, but can play multiple positions in a pinch. That is Tyler Fitzgerald. Do you think that he should be on this roster? Can he help them during this season? Is he going to be of value to them?
Again, like we're going to talk about, and you're going to hear in the next segment, we kind of mentioned the log jam that the Giants have in the outfield. He's a good center fielder. He plays a very good center field, serviceable shortstop. He went down and hit 2 home runs yesterday, and then hit 2 home runs already against El Paso today. So, and he had a grand slam yesterday. So he's kind of taken out his frustration in AAA right now. And he did have some exciting moments on the base paths and kind of, sparked the team to a win early in the season at home. But again, at this point, I don't think there's any room for him. If you need another shortstop up in the majors, where do you go? You go Luciano. If you need another outfielder, another center fielder, now that Jung-Hoo Lee is gone, if you're going to need another outfielder, then things have gotten ugly and bleak. So if Yaz goes down right now with the situation the Giants are in the outfield, then we see him in the majors, but I don't think we see him back up to fill another infield spot unless Luciano and Ahmed are both hurt, and that's the only situation. So he's kind of, when you're looking at a 26-man roster, he's like, 30th probably on the list at this point, I would think.
You would love to have your roster offensively so locked in that you could afford to bring him up just for his speed and utility defense, but they don't have that. They don't have, if they're the Dodgers and they had, 1 through 9 who are just hitting lasers, then you bring up Fitzgerald because you're like, we got a couple of lumbering guys. If we need to steal a bag, you put them in, but the Giants just don't have that. And they don't have that privilege. So
Yeah, if you've got him on a Dodgers roster where he can be on your bench, pinch run, play center field every fifth game, and you're fine with him sitting and not getting at bats in AAA, then yeah, that's the case. But again, the Giants need him in AAA right now because most of their other outfielders are on the Giants 26-man roster in San Francisco. So you're kind of stuck in that point as well.
All right, next week we'll be back on Wednesday again, and because we're recording these shows during the day for Bleacher Report, the shows, the podcast and the YouTube video will probably be up in the midday, in the early evening. I generally try to get them up before the Giants actually play, but now that they're on the road, it's going to be a little harder because they played 3 hours earlier.
Yeah.
But they'll be up Wednesday night-ish, Wednesday midday night-ish. But then next week we'll preview kind of our June schedule because it is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be different for us too. We even switched around the way that we did this show, where we're doing the intro and then we throw to the Bleacher Report segment. So I think that may fit a little bit better. But yeah, so things are going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be for a good reason. Hopefully we get more eyeballs and more earballs on our stuff and on the death lineup and on We Want Winners as well. All right, let's throw it to the discussion that Brad and I had about the young players. Do we like these kids? All right, it's time to talk about the San Francisco Giants. I am Double G alongside my co-host Brad Evans, and we're going to talk about the youngsters that are all over the baseball field for the Giants today. And I'm going to play a little game with Brad.
Hey.
The title of this show is "Do We Like These Kids?" When Brad and I were younger, when we were young baseball fans, part of the Giants marketing in the mid 80s after losing 100 games was, you gotta like these kids because they had a pretty robust farm system. And the likes of Will Clark and Robbie Thompson and Matt Williams and Kevin Mitchell and those guys were younger players, and they kind of kicked off a popularity with the Giants. So we're kind of bringing it back to like 1986, 1987. But the way that we're going to discuss it is I'm going to go through some of the players who have actually been up and have gotten a lot of time. A lot, we're talking a couple weeks, and we're going to look at their 14-game or their 14-day split. And the question is simply going to be, should these guys keep playing no matter what? Even when some of the veterans come back, when you see someone like a Nick Ahmed come back from injury, Michael Conforto, I think we probably think Michael Conforto needs to play because of his salary and because of his great start. But when he does come up, somebody is going to have to go down. So we'll go through these young players as it pertains to the current team. And we think that this team wants to compete because of the contracts that they've signed, some of these guys. But also at the same time, we'll look at some of the other players like Matt Chapman, who is starting to heat up a bit. And also we have to understand that someone like Jung-Hoo Lee out for the season, which is a big downer for us.
Yeah, that's brutal.
He was the guy that we were kind of going to point to be like, this is the one that you're going to buy the jersey for your kid. Like he's going to stick around for a while. So let's kick it off with, let's go Lamont Wade Jr. Now, Lamont Wade Jr. No, actually, we'll save Lamont because he's a vet. He's not someone we really need to kind of wonder about. But let's start with Luis Matos. Luis Matos last week was the National League Player of the Week. His past 14 days, he's hitting 367. He's slugging 667, 16 RBI, which is insane for 2 weeks because he had the 2-game run. Now, when players like a Conforto, like an Austin Slater, when those guys come back, do you want to see Luis Matos play every day, or at least close to every day? because it does mean that one of the veterans may not be playing, whether it's Slater or Yaz, as much. What you've seen out of Luis Matos, who right now is their everyday center fielder, do you like Matos, and do you want to see him stick with the big ball club?
110% yes. I want Matos to say. Now, we're going to get to Ramos in a minute because you've got two right-handed outfielders, so a crunch is going to happen. But if Slater were to come back, for me, I hope it's for about a minute and a half because they're going to have to get him back on the roster to then DFA him. And I hate to say that. We love Slater. We love everything Slater has done for the ball club over the years. But if you're talking about a right-handed outfielder who can play center field, now he has some rough spots in center field. Luis Matos does so far, but he has made some spectacular catches. He's just going to go ahead and build on that. And that's also going to be part of, the young guys' growing pains. You're going to have growing pains with the young players no matter what. But at this point, I think Luis Matos, what is he, third or fourth on the team already in RBIs? And he's only been up for, a couple of weeks, week and a half. And at the very beginning of the season for a couple of games. So, yeah, when Slater comes back, I think he's going to be gone right away. And I want to see Matos stick with the club and play against lefties at least. Again, it's going to be tough because there are so many decisions to make. That's decision number one. Can I go back and change that later? Or am I stuck with that?
Well, I guess,
as the game goes along here, as you throw out more names.
Yeah. If he goes one for his next 40, then you probably don't want him to struggle in the big leagues, kind of like what happened last year. But I think if he's shown that he can do it. So that's the thing.
Yeah. And I think that's what we've been saying all along with Austin Slater. Yeah, he's struggling and he's struggled all season long, but he can do it. We've seen it. So now I don't think you can say with Matos, like, we haven't seen what he do yet. We have now. We've totally seen it. And he can be that player. I mean, the exit velocity off of his bat is ridiculous compared to that of Austin Slater. Slater can play center field, but again, so can Matos, and he's going to learn and he's going to get better as time goes along. I really, really think it would be almost impossible to go backwards at this point with Matos and Slater.
When it comes to Matos as a center fielder, I don't think that's his strongest position. But it is a position of need right now for the Giants.
Yeah.
He is almost there by default because they don't want to move Yaz out of right field. And if you saw how Yaz played O'Neal Cruz's laser off the fence to tie the game yesterday, if Yaz doesn't play that perfectly, they may have won it in the ninth off of Doval. But that you take Yaz out of right field and you're actually making two positions worse because they don't have anybody who can play right field like Yaz can. So Matos is there as a need. He's made a couple of good plays. I actually was at the game where he started in center field after Jung-Hoo Lee was hurt, and he was playing so tentatively. Everything. The way he went back on a ball, the way he came in on a ball, I don't know if he was misreading off of the bat. The Dodgers were hitting everything super hard, so maybe that was also part of it. But he doesn't seem like a natural center fielder is my point. So they're allowing him to grow into that. I think his ability to play center field is probably what gives him more opportunity to stick with the big club.
Yeah, I think so. And again, the game in Pittsburgh yesterday, the first game of this 3-game series, early in the game, balls were hit to center field and left field. And I saw, you go from shadows to all of a sudden, boom, Matos and Ramos are in the middle of a sun field out in left and center field. And I was getting nervous every time the ball was hit out there. But they were getting underneath everything, making the plays, shading their eyes correctly. So, again, I have promise going forward. I think you're going to make some defensive gaffes as a young person, and maybe for the rest of your career, because if you are not a true center fielder, like you said, you're going to make some mistakes. And then again, when Jung-Hoo Lee comes back next year, and again, I'm jumping so far ahead, but when Jung-Hoo Lee comes back next year, you have a good defensive center fielder and almost Gold Glover in center field. And then you've got Yaz in right field as almost a Gold Glover because he was in the final three a couple of years ago. I think it was last year or 2 years ago for right field Gold Glove award. So then you start thinking, okay, now we're going to have to sacrifice defense somewhere to get Matos in the lineup. But again, so far ahead. But right now, I'm okay with sacrificing some defense for some offense. But right now, the way it is, because of the need for it, because of injuries, we're sacrificing a lot of defense for some offense, for some young offense that we aren't 100% sure of yet.
Now we're going to talk about a player who's been on the, on the 40 man now for a little bit, but has been with the team since 2017. That is Elio Ramos, who was kind of like the first big outfielder prospect, big offensive prospect that they had. And, I think people thought he may have been the player to start in left field for consecutive opening days, which we haven't had since Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
And it hasn't happened yet. I think he is out of options actually at the end of this year. So this is really a put up or shut up year for Ramos. I like seeing him in the lineup. He gives you hope in the lineup. He's got a great arm in the outfield. He looks like he should stick. He walks like he should stick. Like everything about him just looks like gamer and big time baseball player. But it's all going to come down to his competitive at bats. And there was I don't remember what game it was over the weekend. It may have been Saturday, it may have been Sunday. So his first two ABs were like just dribblers back to the pitcher, like a soft ground ball up the middle somehow. And I was just thinking, like, one of the things you want to see from the young players is just the pitch recognition, their ability to like look for something that they can drive, not swinging at the pitcher's pitch necessarily, which is kind of the Casey Schmidt disease. And unfortunately for Schmidt, he's back down in AAA. But Ramos sometimes has these great competitive at-bats. And then in other times, it looks like guesswork, and he's just like swinging no matter what. And then you see these poor at-bats. And I wonder if it's going to happen for him, because when he hits the ball on the nose, he hits it just about as hard as anybody else on this baseball team. And again, as a backup outfielder, do you want, and this is like Austin Slater becomes like the if we're doing like wins against replacement theory, like Austin Slater, we're just going to compare everybody to Austin Slater. But that's kind of what it is. Do you want Matos or do you want Austin Slater? Do you want Ramos or do you want Austin Slater?
Right.
Like, where do you see Ramos in this fit when Slater and Conforto are back from injury?
Yeah, and that's a tough one too, because again, I can see DFAing or trading, trying to do something respectful with Austin Slater because of everything he's meant to the club over the years. And when the time comes for Yaz, the same thing. Try to do something respectful. Trade him to a contender, somebody who needs that, 26th man right-hander off the bench, because the Giants are going to have a plethora of options of right-handers off the bench when everybody is back. But I'm looking at, I'm just looking at 95 mile an hour or more hits, which is, Baseball Savant and StatCast calls that a hard hit, anything 95 miles per hour or more off the bat. Austin Slater has 9 of those this season. Matos and Ramos have not been up that long. They already have, Matos has 15 and Elliot Ramos already has 17.
Wow.
So they're right behind, knocking on Nick Ahmed's weak bat door. I hate to say that because we love Nick Ahmed's off our defense,
Yeah.
but the offense is always a little bit tough to watch. But he saves runs, so you
Yes.
can't argue with that.
He hacks, man. He's a hacker.
Yeah, he's a
Throw that
hacker.
fastball in his eyes and he's swinging.
Absolutely. And Elliot Ramos is now, pretty much first on the team in barrels per plate appearance with 10.2. Ryan McKenna is first, technically. But Ryan McKenna has only had, eight times where the ball has gone off of his bat yesterday, whether it be foul, fair, or whatnot, or swings, should I say? Because I think batted ball events are pretty much anything fouled off, anything put into play. And he has 18.2 barrels per plate appearance. He does swing the bat hard as well. If you saw the ball off of his bat last night, he crushes as well. That's a guy you might be able to trade for a low minor leaguer or some cash or something once everybody starts coming back, because you can't. He's out of options. He was DFA'd by Baltimore, and the Giants were able to pick him up. But you have to have him
twice this year.
He was, and you have to have him on the 40-man because he was DFA'd from the 40-man, and that's how you grabbed him off of waivers. So at that point, you have to have him on the 40-man, and he's out of options, so you can't send him back to AAA without trying to pass him through. But the chances are, since he's already been passed through once and then almost a second time before the Giants grabbed him, there's a chance you could do it a third time and sneak him through and then get him into AAA, because the Giants could always use outfielders in AAA. As you see right now, they're very thin with outfielders in AAA. Tyler Fitzgerald is down there. He was put back down to AAA. He's got 4 home runs in 2 days, which is kind of insane. But going back to your point, it's going to be really tough because Conforto, when you look at him, he pretty much led the regulars with 7.1 barrels per plate appearance. He's hitting the ball very hard this season. So you can't really do anything with him. You want him to finish out the season. He opted in, and he's here to stay.
And he's also, if you are selling at the deadline and Conforto is playing very well, that's an easy sell because you have the young outfielders behind him.
Yeah, and so when it comes down to it, and you can't do anything with Yaz either. You really can't at this point of his career and what he means, like you said earlier, what he means to this team defensively, especially at Oracle Park. I don't know of any other outfielder other than Hunter Pence who has played right field better than Yaz. And I think maybe Yaz has played right field better than Hunter Pence did. And we loved Hunter Pence, and we thought he had great defense in right field. But honestly, I think Yaz probably has perfected it. Has spent a lot of time out there and really perfected right field at Oracle Park. So when it comes down to it, it's going to be Austin Slater, most likely gone. And I think Luis Matos over Ramos at this point has earned that right to be here. Now, next season, you don't have Conforto. And no matter what happens to Austin Slater, you probably don't have him next year because I think he's a free agent. Yaz, I think he still has an arbitration year or 2 even left. So you could possibly trade him in the offseason because he is controllable, but he's getting up there in age. What is he, like 32, 33 now? So that's kind of tough. I don't even think he's a free agent until he's 35 years old. I could be wrong on those numbers, but from what I remember looking at it in the offseason. So yeah, it's a logjam. It's a good problem to have. And again, do you trade Ramos for a lights out reliever in the bullpen, a lights out left-hander in the bullpen? Because Luke Jackson is having problems. So, when it comes down to it, you have to look at that and say, well, what do we do here? We need another bullpen arm.
The teams know what we know, which is Ramos is going to be out of options. So if you wanted to play the game, Giants would have to probably take him off of the 40-man at some point, and maybe that's when you pounce, and maybe you don't have to trade anything for him if you really are a fan of his and you think you can do something with him.
But his stock is rising right now, though, because he's hitting close to 300 and he's crushing the baseball. So that's a commodity that's really, really hard to part with. There are so many issues right now. But again, you do still have that option where you can put Ramos in AAA this season. You don't have to worry about, he's not out of options this season. He's out of options next season.
Yes.
And with Conforto gone and Slater probably gone, now you have 2 outfield spots. So the Giants' outfield future is looking pretty bright. But then also, what happens when we add Juan Soto? Then you're gonna have to trade Ramos, right?
Yeah, there you go. I made a joke about Yaz. It was kind of a mean joke on Twitter, and I said we need to come up with a stat that shows how sad a player makes you when they can't produce with runners on base.
Oh, no.
We might want to call it the Mikey Yaz.
Poor Yaz. I'm telling you.
You know, I can deal with if he has an at bat where he just the pitcher just the pitcher just out pitches his at bat, or he hits a line drive somewhere and it just gets caught. It's the pop-ups with the bags loaded and the strikeouts with runners in scoring position that just drive me nuts. But again, he plays a great right field. And we've said this before. He would be your perfect 4th outfielder because he's so good and so valuable defensively. And he hits left-handed. He can run a little bit. He'd be so valuable. It's just as a starter, sometimes you're like, all right, let's move on to another player.
He's also a streaky hitter. So it's coming. He's on a hot streak right now. So it's coming. And when it starts, you kind of shake your knees a little bit. You get a little nervous. So, yeah.
All right. The dandy of the farm system at one time. This is after we talked about this last week about whether the Giants should sell, or I think we called it tank, and just play the young guys. Because the idea is, if your season as a contender is already hurt by the idea that you lost your starting center fielder and your leadoff hitter, the fact that Blake Snell, we'll see. Blake Snell, after this recording, Blake Snell will make another start. He's back, and he mowed down a bunch of minor leaguers 2 starts in a row. And maybe Blake Snell bounces back and just becomes the second ace to Logan Webb. And then if that happens, then you are kind of playing for this postseason. But there are a lot of things that could happen to where maybe, we had talked about this. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just really focus on figuring out what you have with these young players. So after Nick Ahmed gets hurt, Casey Schmidt comes up, and then the Giants just out and out decide, like, you know what? This is Luciano's job right now. So in the games since he has come up, Luciano is hitting 375, 444 on base, 500 slugging. He's only got 16 ABs, but the thing that you see is the speed in which the baseball jumps off of his bat when he makes contact. He's going to be overmatched in some scenarios. Like there was an AB, I don't remember what day it was over the weekend, but it was like heat on the corner, and slider, and he's like 1, 2, 3, see ya. Like just some of that stuff's gonna happen sometimes, especially when you come in against these filthy right-handed relievers, and he's gonna be overmatched in those scenarios sometimes. But you can go back to Tuesday's game where he hits a ball which is kind of a random ground ball up the middle, but he hits it so hard that O'Neal Cruz is like, he can't even really dive for it. It's an in-between kind of slide into it. Nope, base hit, because he hit the ball much harder than they played him for. So defensively I think is going to be an issue. I watched him play a pretty good game on Sunday. He had like 5 or 6 balls hit to him. He fielded every single one of them. He's got this weird throwing motion where he kind of comes underneath a little bit and a little sidearm, and we're so
nuts to watch.
We're so used to Brandon Crawford like just being nails on every throw, and he isn't nails on every throw. His throws are kind, they're kind of a little bit around, but he had a good game Sunday. You go back to Tuesday night, Giants are up 6-2. Luke Jackson, the aforementioned, has a little problems. He gets the first out on the first pitch, and then he walks 2 guys back to back. You bring in Doval, and there's a ground ball that should end the game. And Luciano is caught in between hops. And I rewatched this play like 3 times. And the runner, who's the runner, was the left-handed Korean player. I forget his name.
Bay.
So Bay gets a giant jump off of Doval. So by the time Luciano is ready to field the ball, like Bay is bearing down on second. And so I think what happened is he knew he was kind of in between. He knew that he needed to field it very quickly to turn the double play. And he kind of glanced over at how close the runner was. So it was just like 3 things at once. And he took his eye off the ball, misses it. And that basically creates the firestorm that was the 9th and the 10th inning. And the Giants lose a game in which they're up 4 runs in Pittsburgh. Would have really kicked off. They would have felt so good about themselves had they closed that game out. You feel like, you're 5 in a row. And then the flip side is losing that game and feeling like, we just have nothing but wasted opportunities. So there's a pro and a con with Luciano playing shortstop and being the guy at shortstop. We've seen Nick Ahmed. We've had 10 years of Brandon Crawford or more. And so we know what that looks like. And then you watch Luciano and he's not that player. So do you like him at short? And do you give him season, or when Ahmed is healthy, are we moving him around, possibly switching positions, or are we just sending him back down to AAA?
I don't think you can move him around right now. I think he needs that move around in the minors, and maybe that error kickstarts upper management to start looking at other ways. Now, if Soler is hurt and Ahmed comes back, then Luciano stays because he can DH. He could be your right-handed DH, and he can also spot start at shortstop. Now, the problem is everybody screams about let the kids play, let the kids play. If you do, you are going to have growing pains. Last night is going to happen. But again, O'Neal Cruz makes an error in the first inning and then allows 2 runs to score for the Giants. Yeah. It's a wash. It's one of those games that the Giants had plenty of opportunities to score throughout the game, plenty of opportunities with bases loaded to drive in more runs. They didn't get the job done. It's hard watching this team, as we have all season long, not score runs, and all of a sudden they're scoring 10 runs, 14 runs, 6 runs. But they score 6 runs and don't win the game, especially when they're up 6-2 in the 9th inning. I'm not putting more than 5% of this on Luciano's error, honestly, because again, the Giants shouldn't have scored those 2 runs in the first inning, although they should have if they would have gotten a big hit instead of a Wilmer Flores pop up to short left field that O'Neal Cruz boots. But I think, and again, Luciano has another option next year. He's still very, very young. When Ahmed comes back, I'd like to see Ahmed get a little bit more, of his playing time back as time goes on. Luciano probably goes back down to AAA. The youth movement, it's not here at the cusp for me. I don't think it's 100% here yet. And I think with the age of this roster, the all in on defense that this team went, I don't think you can say the youth movement is here. But it's absolutely on the cusp. And I think with Luciano getting more at-bats in AAA, he was just starting to blossom. He was taking more pitches. He was getting walks. He was driving the ball to the opposite field. He can continue that in the majors, but if he's having to continue that in the majors while fielding, 121 off the bat of O'Neal Cruz, not that the error last night was that, but when we saw O'Neal Cruz hit 2 over 120 miles an hour last night and 1 at 116. If you're having to constantly field that and learn to hit in the majors, I think it's a big ask of Luciano at this point of his career. He's an exciting player. God, I love to watch him come up to the plate. Jorge Soler has the same type of at-bats as Luciano, and he got a fat 3-year contract. So Luciano is going to be fine offensively. But I think, I mean, in all honesty, he could be your quintessential Giants right-handed DH of the future.
That's interesting. That's an interesting one because the DH is a much more important position now in baseball than ever, with the DH being here to stay. And so someone like Luciano, who some of the value that you got from him as a prospect was that he could play shortstop, which is a very important position. But you look at the best player in baseball right now. What position does he play? He's hitting moonshots from the DH position, Shohei Ohtani.
He doesn't need to play the field. He can't yet. I don't think he can. I don't think he's been cleared to play the field because they don't want him throwing or doing anything.
And why would you even put him in the outfield?
No, I mean, it would have to be in a pinch in the playoffs, a do or die game of some sort, because he's going to start throwing. All right. I think he has already started throwing, but he hasn't thrown off the mound or done anything like that yet. So, I mean, the Dodgers have such a deep 40-man roster. They don't need to put him in the outfield. But yeah, it's just the DH position. People used to look at that and say, oh, well, that's where you put the guys who just can't do anything else. Well, sure. I mean, you do, but also Jorge Soler could play the outfield, even though we don't want to see him do it. Jock Peterson could play the outfield, even though we hated to see him do it.
Hurt my feelings when he would.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Luciano can play short, and he made a fantastic play in the second inning. A one-hop liner to him. He stabbed it, spun around 360, made the throw to first base. So he can play shortstop. It's not like he's just, stick him there and grab your rosary and let's hope we get through this.
Yeah.
I just see him as a DH because, again, the Giants have so many options in the outfield. They're not going to put him at third. Definitely not this season because Chapman's there. But next season, you also have Casey Schmidt. You can go out and get another third baseman. You don't have to stick him at third. The ball gets on him so darn fast. If he's having trouble with ground balls at shortstop, he's going to have a hell of a time with ground balls at third base. So there's not a ton of options that we know of yet. Is he going to be a corner outfielder? We keep hearing that. But again, the Giants are like jam-packed with corner outfielders right now. So what do you do there? So I don't see him anywhere else next season, possibly, other than, as a DH. Because the Giants they can go out and find a shortstop. They could put Casey Schmidt at short. I trust his glove way more than I do Luciano's. But do you want Casey Schmidt in the lineup? So there so many moving parts, so many questions. And that's why I don't think you can say, here's the young guys, let them play. There's still too many questions.
All right, I just wanted to I mentioned Lamont Wade at the beginning. He's not one of these younger players, but I just wanted to highlight a few things with Lamont and Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman is heating up. I think he went 11 straight at-bats by getting on base over the weekend. He is now up to 243, which isn't like great or anything, but if you saw what his batting average was before that, over the last 14 days, Matt Chapman's hitting 372 with a 651 slugging. He hit another home run last night. And Lamont Wade, the question that I wanted to ask you, and we'll get out of here on this question. Lamont Wade is hitting 319 for the year, 463 on base, 416 slugging. So he's not really hitting for much power.
Right.
But he's getting on base. Can we keep him out of the lineup is my question, because he didn't play yesterday until he came in as a sub yesterday?
He did, yeah, later in the game. Yeah.
Why shouldn't he just be the everyday player? I understand the lefty and this and that, but can you afford to keep a guy on the bench who gets on base at a 46% clip? I don't think so.
No, not with this team. I don't think you can. And we love Wilmer Flores, but he's got to get some at bats. And so you stick him in there against a lefty and say, hey, get your ABs, stay fresh, stay warm. And again, that's another one. I hate to say it, but that's another one from the roster from the 26 man that could be in danger because you have a plethora of right-handed bats now. But then again, Lamont Wade Jr. would have to play every day. Do you have somebody else who could play first base at this point? Blake Sable, maybe. Patrick Bailey, has he ever played first base? So you're going to be sticking somebody at first base that has just not played there before. So that could be an issue. And we saw earlier in the season, Lamont Wade Jr., just to keep him in the lineup, they were sticking him out in right field.
Yeah.
But then you lose a little bit of defense when you do that as well. You stack your you've got your left, right, because at that point too, you're putting him in right field so Flores can play. So it's not necessarily the left, right, so you can get all of those players into the lineup. You're just doing it to keep Lamont Wade Jr. in the lineup is what you're doing. So, I mean, God, I'd take, even though he's not hitting for power, I'd take 2 or 3 more Lamont Wade Jr.'s at this point and stick him in the lineup. If you're getting on an almost a 500 clip, that's insane.
Yeah. All right. That's going to be it from here. We will be back next week to talk about more stories and narratives on this 2024 San Francisco Giants season. They are currently 3 games under 500, so they have some work to do to get back to 500, but we have to admit they have been playing a lot better baseball of late. Thank you, Colorado Rockies, for existing.
Yeah.
All right. For Brad, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.